Hi, I'm Hal Lindsey, your Watchman on the Wall. I have a Watchman Warning this morning. After the conference that President Obama and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel had this last week, I see a real conflict of interest, a lot of nice rapport that they had. But when you analyze the things they said publicly in the press interview, I began to analyze and see that there were deep differences between what they want to do about the Palestinian question and about the Iranian threat with their nuclear weapons. And so I want to focus on that in this report. I believe that it's something that is very, very urgent. I believe I read that there was something like 72 senators who appealed to President Obama after those meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that President Obama become more susceptible or more in agreement with the position that he was holding. Now, according, after something like this, everyone puts their own spin on it, and certainly the Muslim world, and focusing on the Palestinian issues, they put their own spin and summation on the result. And one of them, I believe, was very well said in Israel Today. In this, it says, Palestinian officials cited by Ynet on Wednesday said the U.S. President Barack Obama intends to formally bequeath them the eastern half of Jerusalem, which is the real Jerusalem, Old Jerusalem, when he unveils his new Middle East peace initiative in Cairo next month. The Palestinian Authority officials said that Obama will go further than President George W. Bush and Bill Clinton in that he will prejudge the outcome of negotiations by calling for Israel to fully surrender those areas of Jerusalem that were illegally occupied by Jordan from 1948 to 1967. Now, this opens a historic problem. You know, when the Israelites were kicked out of the land of Israel by the Romans in 70 A.D., the city of Jerusalem was destroyed, the people were scattered, what became all over the world for 2,000 years. All during that time, from virtually every country in the world where the Israelites were scattered, when they celebrated the Passover feast every year, they would have a toast at the end of the Passover feast. Next year in Jerusalem. Because as you read the Bible, you read the Old Testament, Jerusalem is the very heart of the Jewish people. It's the very heart of Judaism. Without it, Judaism has virtually no reason to exist. Because unlike most religions, Judaism and the Israelite understanding of it is all based by God around being in Israel and especially possessing the city of Jerusalem. And the heart and center of everything is the Temple Mount, where two different temples in history have been built by the Israelis, and they worship from there. So this is not just a small issue. I mean, there have been so many wars over possession of Jerusalem from time immemorial. For President Obama to coolly and unceremoniously say that he is going to give to the Palestinians the ancient holy city of Jerusalem with all of its environs, and especially the Temple Mount, was a declaration of something that Israel would never agree to. When they took back Jerusalem in June 1967, they were authorized to do that because certainly they had been attacked from all sides. And so in defending themselves, they took the city back. And once they took that city, I still remember General Moshe Dayan going to the Wailing Wall, the western retaining wall of the temple area, and saying, "We've returned our holiest of holy places never to leave her again. So the passions that are involved here are incredible. Yet on the other hand, the Muslims believe, and this was something that came up as kind of a myth long after Muhammad had died, they believed that Muhammad flew on his horse by night to Jerusalem before he died, and that he was transported to heaven from Jerusalem. That makes Jerusalem a very holy city to the Muslim faith. In fact, it's been declared their third holiest city. During the Crusades, there was one horrible war after another fought for possession of Jerusalem between the Christian world and the Muslims. So to say that we're going to give that to the Palestinians and take it away from the Jews is just a big thing. In fact, one of the most important prophecies in the Word of God in Zechariah chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, warns the world about meddling with Jerusalem. And it says that Jerusalem would become the focal point of problems for the whole world, and eventually all would go to war over it. Behold, I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup that causes literally drunkenness to all the peoples around, and when the siege is against Jerusalem, it will also be against Judah. And it will come about in that day, and this is speaking of the days just before the return of the Messiah. In that day, I will make Jerusalem a heavy, burdensome stone for all peoples. All who attempt to lift it will be severely injured, though all the nations of the earth are gathered against it. He says that he's going to make Jerusalem like a cup that causes drunkenness to all the people around, the countries around Israel. And there's nothing that makes people drunker than religion and religious sites. And so he is saying that he's going to make them drunk with passion for possessing Jerusalem. Well, what do people do when they're drunk? Stupid things. And so they're going to press to take this and draw all the nations of the world into it, it says. And that's what's being set up right now. They're drawing all the nations in the world into this conflict. And God warns that he's going to make Jerusalem a burdensome stone to all the nations of the world. And everyone who attempts to lift it and toss it out of the way will be severely injured, actually mortally injured. So that means that in the modern speak, it means all of those who try to settle the Jerusalem issue are going to be completely destroyed. And, you know, I look at this, I've seen it set up, I've seen it coming. And all I can say is among all the sins America's committing, they're stepping into one of the worst of all here, because our president is now trying to force Israel to give up the entire holy city of Jerusalem, ancient Jerusalem. That's not going to fly. And it's going to wind up causing a conflict that will involve all the nations of the world. And that's going to ultimately lead to Armageddon. Because as Zechariah chapters 12, 13, and 14 predict, the whole world is going to go into a tremendous war because of Jerusalem. So I urge you to pray about this, because this is something that is really going to bring the wrath of God down upon the United States. And as I said, I think it was 72 senators have already appealed to him to come to understand the Israeli position, especially as it relates to Iran and their nuclear weapons. So I urge you to pray about it. This is your Watchman on the Wall, signing off right now. I'll be talking with you on other issues later.